The Duke of Ashworth had been lied to too many times. He sat in his study at Blackthorn Hall on a cold morning in early November, reading the latest letter from Lady Marchwood for the third time. The paper smelled faintly of rosewater and something else, something powdery and false. He set it down on the desk and looked out the tall window at the grey sky. His fingers tapped once against the wood, then stopped. His name was Gideon Ashworth, and he was 36 years old, and he had learned 3 years ago never to trust a letter that praised a young woman too much. The last time he had trusted such a letter, he had travelled 200 miles to meet a girl who had been rehearsed like an actress on a stage. She had said all the right words. She had worn all the right silks, and when he had turned his back for one moment, he had heard her laugh with her mother about the size of his estate. He had left that same afternoon, and had not spoken of it since. Now here was another letter. Another mother writing to praise another daughter. Miss Petra Blackwood, the letter said, was a jewel of quiet grace. Miss Petra Blackwood was gentle and accomplished. Miss Petra Blackwood would suit him well. The village of Hensley Cross, where the Blackwoods lived, was 3 days' ride from London, and Lady Marchwood had already arranged everything. A dinner, a ball, 3 days of proper society, all arranged for his benefit. Gideon rose from his desk and walked to the fireplace. The logs cracked and hissed. He held his hands out to the warmth and thought of his father, who had once said that a man in his position must be careful, because everyone he met would be wearing a mask. His father had died 2 winters past, and Gideon had thought of that sentence more times than he could count. He would not go as the Duke. He would go early, 3 days early, dressed as a common traveller. And he would see the girl before she knew he was watching. If she was as false as the last one, he would leave without ever revealing himself. If she was real, he would decide then. He rang the bell for his valet. When the man came in, Gideon spoke without turning from the fire. "Prepare a coat. A plain one. Wool, well made but worn. Boots the same. I ride out tomorrow at dawn." The valet, who had served him for 11 years, did not ask why. He only nodded and left the room. That night Gideon sat by the fire for a long time. The smell of wood smoke settled into his clothes. He thought about deception, and about how a man could lie to himself just as easily as anyone else could lie to him. He thought that perhaps this whole plan was foolish. But he had been fooled once, and he would not be fooled again. When the fire burned low, he rose and went to bed. He rode out the next morning before the sun came up. The frost cracked under his horse's hooves. His breath came out in white clouds against the dark air. He wore a wool coat the colour of old bark, and boots that had been polished but not too finely, and a scarf wound twice around his neck. He carried a leather bag with a few plain shirts inside, and in the bottom of the bag, wrapped in cloth, was his signet ring. He would need it later. For now, it stayed hidden. He rode for 2 days and slept one night at a small inn where no one knew his face. The innkeeper called him Sir, but only because he called everyone Sir. On the 3rd day he reached the outskirts of Hensley Cross by mid-afternoon. The village lay in a shallow valley, with smoke rising from thatched roofs, and a church tower rising above the trees. He slowed his horse, and looked down at it and thought that it looked like every other village in England, and that perhaps his answer waited in it, or perhaps did not. He rode into the village and asked at the smithy for work. He said his name was Mr. Ash, that he was a horse trader passing through, and that his own horse had thrown a shoe. The smith, a broad man with soot on his cheek, looked at him carefully and then at his horse, and then said there was work if he wanted it, mucking stables for the next few days at the inn up the road. The pay was small, but honest. Gideon thanked him and rode on. The inn stood at the far end of the village, a low building of grey stone with an old sign creaking above the door. The sign showed a black hare running. He tied his horse in the yard, walked inside and asked for the innkeeper. A tall, thin man came out from a back room, wiping his hands on a cloth. Gideon repeated his story. The innkeeper looked him over once and shrugged and said there was a bed in the loft above the stables and food twice a day, and 3 shillings at the end of the week. Gideon accepted. He carried his bag up the wooden ladder into the loft. Straw covered the floor and the smell of horses came up strongly through the boards. A small window at the far end let in a square of grey light. He set down his bag, sat on the narrow cot and waited. He had done this before, in a different life, when he had been young and had travelled with his father through the north. He had forgotten how quiet a stable loft could be, and how honest. There were no lies in the smell of hay. That evening he came down to help in the yard, and he saw her for the first time. She was walking across the yard with a basket over her arm. She wore a plain grey dress and a shawl the colour of pale butter. Her hair was dark brown, twisted up simply, with one strand escaping at the temple. She was not tall. She was not what men called beautiful in a drawing room. But she moved like someone who had walked this yard 1,000 times. And when a horse in the stable shifted and stamped, she did not flinch. She only glanced toward the sound and kept walking. She saw him. Their eyes met. She gave him a small nod, the way any person might nod to any other person in a village yard, and then she walked on, into the inn's back door, and was gone. Gideon stood with a pitchfork in his hand and did not move for a moment. He had expected a girl in silks. He had expected someone who would have been prepared to meet him if she had known who he was. This was not her. This could not be her. But the innkeeper had said, when Gideon had asked, that Miss Blackwood came down from the manor most afternoons to bring bread and preserves for the poor rooms upstairs. That was what she did. She came herself. She did not send a servant. He worked until the sun set. He ate his supper in the kitchen with the other yard hands, a stew of mutton and turnips that tasted of salt and pepper, and something bitter he could not name. The bread was fresh and warm and smelled of yeast. He thought as he ate that he had eaten in the finest dining rooms of England, and this small kitchen was more honest than most of them. When he went up to his loft that night, he lay awake for a long time and listened to the horses breathing in the stalls below. The next morning he was cleaning out a stall when she came in. She did not see him at first. She came into the stable with a small pot of something wrapped in cloth, and she went straight to the far end, where the oldest horse in the stable stood in his box. The horse was called Cobb, according to the name plate above the door, and Cobb was grey around the muzzle and had one clouded eye. She spoke to Cobb in a low voice. She uncovered the pot. She dipped her fingers into whatever was inside and rubbed it gently into the horse's shoulder, where Gideon now noticed a raw patch of skin. Gideon stood very still. She did not know he was watching. She hummed a small tune under her breath, so quiet he could barely hear it, and she worked at the horse's shoulder with slow, careful strokes. The smell of some kind of herb rose from the pot. Comfrey, perhaps, and honey. The horse blew warm air out through his nose and leaned his head against her arm. She rested her cheek against his neck for a moment, just a moment, and closed her eyes. Then she straightened, wiped her fingers on a cloth from her pocket, covered the pot again, and turned to leave. That was when she saw him. She stopped. She looked at him with steady grey-green eyes and did not seem embarrassed. She said, "You are new." "Yes, miss. Since yesterday." "You should not be watching without saying so. It is not polite." Gideon lowered the pitchfork. "I did not want to interrupt you." "I beg your pardon." She studied him for a moment longer. Then she nodded once, as if she had decided something, and said, "Cobb likes quiet company. If you are cleaning his stall next, do it slowly. He is frightened of quick movements now, that he cannot see well on the left side." "I will do that, miss." "Good." She walked past him toward the door. At the door she paused and turned back. "There is a pot of salve on the shelf above his water bucket. If the patch opens again before I return tomorrow, put a little on it. Only a little. Do not press hard." "Yes, miss." She went out into the yard. Gideon stood with the pitchfork in his hand and did not move for a long time. Cobb turned his old head and looked at him with the one good eye, and Gideon thought that the horse knew perfectly well who he was, and did not care. That afternoon Gideon walked into the village. He wanted to hear what people said about her. He stopped at the baker's and asked for a small loaf. The baker, a round woman with flour up to her elbows, wrapped the bread in paper and told him it was twopence. She looked at him with the sharp curiosity of a village woman who noticed every stranger. "You are staying at the Black Hare?" "Yes, ma'am." "Passing through?" "For a few days." She nodded slowly. "Miss Petra was in this morning. She takes bread up to the almshouse every Tuesday." "Miss Petra Blackwood?" The baker's eyes narrowed. "You know her name." The innkeeper mentioned her. The baker seemed satisfied with this. She wiped her hands on her apron. "She has done it since she was 14. Since her mother died. Her father would not know it, and I would not tell him. He thinks she rides for pleasure. She rides to bring bread and jam to old women who cannot walk down to the market." Gideon paid for his loaf. As he was leaving, the baker added, "Her sister does not." "Her sister?" "Miss Isolde, the older one. She rides for pleasure only. She rides with a red feather in her hat and expects the village to bow. Well, we bow, but we know which one comes with jam and which one comes with a feather." Gideon thanked her and left. He walked back to the inn with the loaf under his arm and thought about what he had heard. He worked in the yard the rest of the day. That evening, the innkeeper's wife brought him supper in the kitchen. She was a woman of about 50 with a kind, tired face. She sat down across from him for a moment while he ate. "You do good work, Mr. Ash." "Thank you, ma'am. Tomorrow the manor will send down word about the ball on Friday. They have invited half the county. The Duke of Ashworth himself is expected to come, they say." Gideon kept eating. He did not look up. "Is he expected here?" "At the manor, not the inn. But the whole village will be watching. The Blackwoods hope he will offer for Miss Petra." "Miss Petra." The woman's face softened. "She is a good girl. She does not know she is to be sold like a horse at market, and she deserves better than that. But that is the way of it in the great houses. My husband says it is not our business." "And Miss Isolde?" The woman snorted softly. "Miss Isolde would sell herself if the price were right. She is not the one being offered, though. That is the sting of it. She is the elder, but the Duke asked for Petra by name in his letter, they say. So Isolde is furious and Petra does not know." "Does not know?" "Miss Petra does not know she is being offered at all. Her father has not told her. He thinks she will do as she is told when the time comes. And she will. Poor thing. She always does what she is told, because she thinks that is what love is." The woman rose then, seeing that Gideon had finished, and took the plate away. He sat at the table for a long time after she left. His hands were flat on the wood. He thought about a father who had not told his daughter that she was being offered like a piece of goods. He thought about a sister who would have taken the offer gladly and would now hate the one who received it. He thought about the girl in the stable rubbing salve into an old horse's shoulder, and he thought that this was not what he had expected to find in Hensley Cross. He went up to his loft. He did not sleep well. The next morning he was mending a bit of harness in the yard when he heard voices from the other side of the wall. Two women, speaking sharply. He recognized one of the voices. It was Petra's voice, quiet and even. The other voice he did not know. It was higher, faster, sharper. "You will not go down to the almshouse today. I forbid it. I go every Tuesday. Isolde, Mrs. Halstead is expecting me. Mrs. Halstead is a peasant, and you will not wear that grey dress this evening. Father will be furious. I like this dress. You like everything shabby. It is embarrassing. Do you know who is coming tomorrow? Do you have any idea?" A pause. Then Petra's voice, still quiet. "Father said a guest." "A guest." A short laugh, without joy. "A guest. Yes, that is one word for him. Who is it then?" "You will find out soon enough, and when you do, you will thank me for making you wear something other than that grey rag. Take it off." "Now, Isolde," I said now. There was a rustling of fabric, and then silence. Gideon did not move. He kept his hands on the harness. His jaw was tight. He heard footsteps then, and Petra came around the corner of the wall, carrying a basket, wearing the same grey dress. Her cheeks were flushed, but her eyes were steady. She saw him and stopped for half a heartbeat. Then she walked past him, out into the road, without a word. He did not go after her. He did not have that right. Not yet. Not in this coat and these boots. But he set down the harness and walked to the stable and went into Cobb's stall. He stood with the old horse for a while. Cobb pressed his nose into Gideon's shoulder and blew warm breath through his coat, and Gideon rested his hand on the horse's neck and felt his own heart slow. That afternoon Gideon walked up the lane toward the manor, staying in the trees. He wanted to see the house. He wanted to see the road she walked. He was not spying, he told himself, though he knew he was. He kept to the hedges and walked slowly. Halfway up the lane he came upon a small stone wall and, sitting on the other side of it in the grass, a boy of perhaps 10 years old with a bandage around his knee. The boy was crying softly, trying not to. Gideon stopped. "What has happened?" The boy looked up, startled. "I fell. My father is going to be angry. The basket broke." There was a basket beside the boy, tipped on its side, and eggs spilled out of it, most of them cracked. Gideon crouched down. "Did you cut yourself badly?" "No, sir, only my knee." Gideon looked at the eggs. 6 were broken. 4 were still whole. He counted the pieces carefully. He thought for a moment. He reached into his coat pocket and took out a small leather pouch. He counted out 6 pennies. He handed them to the boy. "Take these to your father. Tell him you sold 6 eggs on the road for a penny each. That is a fair price. The rest you can carry home whole. Can you stand?" The boy stared at the coins. "But, sir, can you stand?" The boy stood, slowly testing his knee. He nodded. Gideon helped him gather the whole eggs back into the basket. He did not say his own name. He did not tell the boy who he was. He simply set the boy on his way, watched him limp down the lane, and then he turned and went back to the inn. He did not tell anyone what he had done. He forgot it, almost by evening. That night at supper the innkeeper's wife mentioned that a boy had come by the manor kitchen crying that a stranger with a kind face had given him 6 pennies for broken eggs. She thought it was a lovely story. Gideon ate his stew and said nothing. The next morning Petra came to the stable early. She saw him already at work in Cobb's stall. She said, "You are here again." "Yes, miss. How long will you stay?" "Until the end of the week. I have a horse to sell at the fair in Barradon." She nodded. She came into the stall with her small pot. Gideon stepped back to let her work. She rubbed the salve into Cobb's shoulder. The horse leaned against her again. She said, without looking at Gideon, "The patch is smaller today." "Yes, miss, I kept him quiet. Thank you." She was silent for a while. Then she said, "There is a ball tonight at the manor. My sister expects me to attend. I would rather muck this stall." Gideon almost laughed. He kept his face still. "Balls are not to your taste, miss. I have been to 3 of them. Each one was longer than the last. I do not like the smell of too many candles in one room, and I do not like being looked at. I would think a lady would grow used to it." She looked up at him then. Her eyes were sharp. "Would you?" "No, miss, I would not." She held his gaze for a moment. Then she looked back at Cobb. "My sister says a duke is coming." "Is he?" "So they say. I have never met a duke. I do not know what one is supposed to look like. Isolde says he is old and stern, and that he will not smile once all evening. She says I am not to speak unless spoken to. She says I am to keep my hands folded and my chin down. And will you?" "I do not know." She capped the salve and stood up. She looked at him for a moment longer than seemed necessary. Then she said, "Miss Ash, you have a strange manner for a horse trader." Gideon felt something cold slide down the back of his neck. He kept his voice steady. "How so, miss? You look at people directly. Most men in your trade do not. They look at the horse. I beg your pardon. I am not scolding you." She almost smiled. "I only noticed. Good day." She left. Gideon leaned against the stall wall for a long moment and did not move. That afternoon Gideon walked back into the village. He needed air. He needed to think. He walked past the church and past the smithy and down toward the small stream that ran along the edge of the village. There was a wooden footbridge over the stream. He stopped in the middle of it and looked down at the water. He heard voices approaching. He stepped back and stood in the shadow of a willow. 2 women came along the path from the manor direction. One wore a fine blue riding habit and a hat with a red feather. The other was a maid in a brown dress. They stopped at the foot of the bridge to fix a strap on the lady's boot. The invitation says 9 o'clock. Bessie, 9 o'clock. And Petra is going to be late because she is off with those wretched almshouse women again. Yes, my lady. I have arranged everything. Everything. The candles, the music, the seating. And she does not even know what she is being offered. No, my lady. The red feather bobbed as the lady straightened. Do you know what I said to father this morning? I said, it should have been me. The Duke of Ashworth wrote to father 4 months ago. He asked about a Blackwood daughter. Father wrote back and named Petra. Petra. As if I were not the elder. As if I were not the more accomplished. As if I had not spent every day of the last 3 years preparing for exactly this. And she does not even want it. No, my lady. Well, the lady's voice hardened. If she will not want it, she will not have it. I have written to a friend of mine in London, a friend who knows the Duke. I have told my friend certain things about Petra, things that will find their way to his grace before he arrives tomorrow evening. My lady, I have told my friend that Petra spends her afternoons in stables with common men, that she has been seen laughing with a stable hand at the inn. A new one. A stranger. I have told my friend that she is not the pure creature they think she is, and when the Duke hears it, he will look at her differently. He will look at her, and he will see it. And then he will look at me. The lady laughed. It was a small, satisfied laugh. Gideon's fingers tightened on the wood of the bridge rail. My lady, that is not true. About Miss Petra. Of course it is not true, Bessie. Do you think I am a fool? But the Duke does not know that, and he will not know until it is too late. Now come, we must be back before she is. They walked on. Gideon stood in the shadow of the willow and did not move for a very long time. His hand was still on the rail. He looked down at the water and watched it move over the stones. He walked back to the inn. He climbed to the loft. He sat on the cot and looked at his leather bag on the floor. He had come here to see the truth. He had seen it. He waited until dusk. Then he took the bag down the ladder, walked out to the yard, and asked the innkeeper if he might use a private room for an hour to write a letter. The innkeeper, surprised, said yes. Gideon paid him a shilling and went inside. In the small room he took the signet ring from the cloth at the bottom of his bag. He put it on his finger. He took out paper and pen. He wrote a short note to Lord Blackwood, sealed it with wax and the ring, and asked the innkeeper to have it delivered to the manor within the hour. The innkeeper looked at the wax seal. His face went pale. Sir, just have it delivered, and keep this to yourself until tomorrow morning. After that you may say what you like. Sir, forgive me. Are you? Yes, the innkeeper bowed low. Gideon put a hand on his shoulder. You did nothing wrong. You gave a bed to a tired traveller. There is no fault in that. He went back up to the loft. He shaved carefully with cold water. He unpacked the fine shirt that had been at the bottom of his bag, the good coat, the boots he had not worn. When he came down again, he was still not fully himself. He was Mr. Ashe in better clothes. But the ring was on his finger, and the signet caught the lamplight when he moved. He walked up the lane to the manor in the dark. Lanterns had been lit along the drive. Carriages stood in the yard. Music came faintly through the tall windows. He walked up the front steps and gave his name to the footman at the door. His Grace, the Duke of Ashworth. The footman's face did not change, but Gideon saw the young man's throat move as he swallowed. He was led into a side room. He waited. He heard voices in the hall, urgent and rising. Then Lord Blackwood himself came in, a large red-faced man of about 50, still buttoning his coat. Your Grace, I had no notion. My letter said Friday. Tomorrow, I forgive me, we were not, Lord Blackwood. There is no cause for apology. I arrived early on purpose. On purpose, Your Grace? I have been in the village these 3 days. under another name. Working at the inn. Lord Blackwood stared at him. His mouth opened and closed. You, Your Grace, I have my reasons. They are my own. I have seen what I came to see. Gideon paused. He looked at Lord Blackwood evenly. I would like to enter the ball now. I would like to be announced properly, and I would like your elder daughter, Miss Isolde, to be present in the room when I am. Miss Isolde, of course, Your Grace. She is there already. Good. Lord Blackwood led him down the hall. He was still stammering. Gideon did not listen. His mind was very quiet now. He could feel his own breath, slow and even. They came to the double doors of the ballroom. The footman stepped inside. The music continued for a moment, then faltered as the footman lifted his voice. His Grace, the Duke of Ashworth. The music stopped completely. The dancers on the floor stopped. Every head turned. Gideon stepped through the doors. The ballroom was long and gold and full of candles. The smell of beeswax filled the air, along with something sweeter, some perfume that women had worn. The floor gleamed. There were perhaps 60 people in the room. He saw them all in a single glance, the way a man notices a herd of horses before he picks one out. At the far end of the room, near a tall window, stood a woman in blue silk with a red rose in her hair. Miss Isolde Blackwood. Her face was already arranged in a careful smile. She was moving toward him, or preparing to move. Behind him, at the doorway on the other side of the room, someone came in late. He turned. It was Petra, in a pale green dress that did not suit her particularly well, her hair pinned quickly, her cheeks flushed as though she had run. She stopped at the sight of him. Her face did not change at first. Then it did. She knew him. Of course she knew him. Even in the finer coat, even with the ring on his finger, and he watched her eyes travel from his face to his hand, and back to his face, and he saw the exact moment she understood everything. She did not move. She stood in the doorway. Her hand went to the frame of the door, one small movement, to steady herself. Her chin came up. She did not run. She did not turn away. Isolde was almost at his side now, already curtsying, already smiling. Your Grace, welcome. My father is... Gideon did not look at her. He walked past her. He walked the length of the ballroom, through the parted crowd, past the still musicians, until he stood in front of Petra. The room was completely silent. He said, quietly, so that only she could hear, Miss Blackwood. She did not curtsy. She looked up at him with her steady grey-green eyes. Her voice was very quiet too. Your Grace, I owe you an explanation. Yes, may I have the honor of the next dance? No. The room, which had been silent, seemed to draw in a breath. Nobody had heard the exchange, only the shape of it, the closeness of it. Gideon did not move. He did not flinch. He gave her one small nod, as one gives to an opponent who has made a fair play. Then may I ask you to walk with me tomorrow morning? In the garden. Just to speak. She thought about this. Her eyes did not leave his. Yes, that I will do. Thank you. He stepped back. He turned to the room. He said, in a voice that carried, "Forgive the interruption. Please continue." The music started again, slowly at first, then more surely. The dancers began to move. He walked away from Petra, toward Lord Blackwood, who looked as though he might collapse. Isolde was still standing where she had been, halfway across the room, her smile now a fixed and terrible thing. Gideon spent 1 hour in the ballroom. He was polite to everyone. He danced with no one. When the hour was over, he left, and he walked back down the lane in the cold night, and he slept in the loft of the stable one more time. Because he had paid for the week, and because he did not want to be at the manor. He did not sleep well. At 9 the next morning he stood at the gate of the manor garden, his hands behind his back. Petra came out of the house wearing the grey dress. Her hair was down, tied simply with a ribbon. She walked to him without hurrying. Your Grace, Miss Blackwood. You may not call me Miss Blackwood in that voice. Not after what you did. Petra, then, if you will allow it. She said nothing. She turned and began to walk along the gravel path. He walked beside her. Their footsteps crunched on the small stones. The morning was cold, and the smell of frost was still on the boxwood hedges. A bird called somewhere. She did not look at him. You came to my father's house pretending to be a horse trader. Yes, you slept in the stable. You mucked out Cobb's stall. Yes, you watched me, when I did not know you were watching. Yes, you listened to me, when I spoke without knowing who I was speaking to. Yes, they walked for a moment in silence. She stopped by a stone bench at the corner of the path. She did not sit. She turned to face him. Her eyes were bright, and he saw that she was very angry, but she was not going to raise her voice, and he was almost sorry for it. He would have found a raised voice easier. Do you know what it feels like, she said, to say something honest to a person, and then to learn later that they were only pretending to be that person? To find out that the whole time you thought you were speaking to a stable hand, you were being watched by a duke? I imagine it feels. Do not imagine, Your Grace. Answer me. Do you know? He was silent. She waited. He said, at last, No. I do not know exactly. I have not been on the other side of it. Then let me tell you. Her voice trembled once, and then held. It makes every kind word I said feel like I was auditioning. Every ordinary thing feels like I was being tested. When you told me you were a horse trader passing through, I believed you. When I spoke to you about the ball, I was speaking to a stranger who did not matter to my life. And now you tell me you were the one man in England whose opinion of me my father has staked his hopes on. Do you understand what that does to a person? Do you understand that you took every honest moment we had and turned it into a trap I did not know I was walking through? Yes, you will not defend yourself? No, not even to say why. I will say why, if you wish to hear it. But I will not use it to defend myself. She looked at him for a long time. Then she sat down on the bench. She folded her hands in her lap. Say it then. He did not sit. He stood before her. He said, 3 years ago I was to be engaged to a young woman whose family had written many letters praising her. I went to meet her in her own house. She was rehearsed. Every word she spoke had been prepared for me. I did not know it until I overheard her, one afternoon, with her mother, laughing about the size of my estate. I left that same day. I have not spoken of it to anyone since. That is a sad story. It is a story that made me a suspicious man, when your father's letters came, and Lady Marchwood's letters came. I read them, and I did not know what to believe, so I decided to come early. To see, not to trap you, to protect myself from being trapped again. I know that is not the same thing to you, but I did not come here to make a fool of you. I came here so that I would not be a fool myself. She was quiet. He said, and there is something else. What? I heard your sister on the bridge yesterday. She had been writing letters to a friend in London, telling that friend to spread things about you, things that were not true. She had done it so that when I arrived, I would look at you differently, and would look at her instead. Petra's face did not change, but her hands tightened in her lap. I know, she said quietly. You know? She does not think I know. She thinks I am a fool. I have known about the letters for a week. I found one on her desk. I did not confront her because there was nothing to be done. If I told my father, he would not believe me. He does not believe me about her, not ever. She is his favorite in all things but the marriage market, and in the marriage market I am useful, and she is inconvenient. So we do not speak of it. Gideon sat down on the bench then, not beside her, not too close, at the far end. He looked out at the frozen garden. I am sorry. For what? For what she has done to you, for a long time, I think. Not only in this. She looked at him then. Her face was tired. Your Grace, why did you write my father's letter naming me? Why not her? She is the elder. She would have made you a more polished duchess. She would have never worn a grey dress to a ball. I did not name you. What? I did not name you. I wrote to your father 4 months ago and asked about a Blackwood daughter of marriageable age and steady character. He wrote back and named you. I did not know until this morning, when he told me that you had a sister at all." She stared at him. She almost laughed, but the sound had no joy in it. "He chose me. Over her. Yes, he never chooses me. Over her. Perhaps he did this once." She sat with that for a long time. A robin landed on the path in front of them, hopped once and flew away. The garden was very quiet. Gideon did not press her. He did not fill the silence. He had learned, in 3 days at an inn, how much could be said by not speaking. At last she said, "I do not forgive you. Not yet. I am not asking you to. But I would like to know something." "Ask." "When you were watching me, in those 3 days, when you thought you were seeing the truth of me, what did you see?" He thought carefully before he answered. He knew this was the question, and he knew she would remember the answer for the rest of her life, whatever it was. He wanted to give it correctly. He said, "I saw you rub salve into a horse's shoulder and rest your cheek against his neck when you thought no one was looking. I saw you speak to me the way you would have spoken to any stranger, which is with the same courtesy you gave the horse. I heard you say that you did not like the smell of too many candles in one room, and I believed you, because you had no reason to lie to a horse trader. I saw you take bread to old women in an almshouse when your father thought you were riding for pleasure. I saw you wear a grey dress to a ball because your sister told you not to, and I saw you walk into that ballroom last night and refuse me a dance because you had every right to refuse me. That is what I saw. It was enough." She did not speak. He saw her eyes fill, but she did not let the tears fall. She turned her face away for a moment toward the hedge and breathed. When she turned back, her eyes were bright but dry. "Thank you for answering. Yes, I need time. Take it. How much will you give me? As much as you need. That is not an answer. It is my answer. I will not court you. I will not press you. I will go back to my own estate. I will write to your father, and I will withdraw all pressure from him. Whatever you decide, it must be your decision. If you wish never to see me again, tell me now, and I will make sure no letter, no visit, no thing of mine ever troubles you. If you wish me to come back in a month, or 6 months, or a year, I will come back. If you wish to write to me, I will answer. I am asking nothing of you. I am only telling you what I will do. That is a great deal to give up. It is not giving up. It is beginning correctly. I began wrongly. I would like to begin again, if you will let me. If you will not, that is your right." She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Come back in the spring. In the spring, not before, but do not stay away longer than that. If you wait longer than that, I will decide you did not mean it. Spring, yes." He rose. He bowed to her, not deeply, but properly. He turned to leave. She stopped him with her voice. "Your Grace." "Yes." "The boy with the eggs." "On the lane." Gideon turned back. He was quiet for a moment. "How did you hear of that?" "The baker told my maid." "My maid told me." She said a kind man with a plain coat gave the boy 6 pennies so that his father would not beat him for the broken eggs. She did not know it was you. Nobody knows. Then let it stay so. Why did you do it? Because I had 6 pennies and he did not. She looked at him. Her face changed in some small way he could not name. That is not a duke's answer. It was not a duke's action. "Go, Your Grace." "Before I say something I am not ready to say." He went. He rode out of Hensley Cross that afternoon. He did not stop at the inn. He had sent word ahead, and his own valet met him with his own horse at the crossroads. He did not look back at the manor. He rode east through the low winter light, and by evening he was in the next county, and by the following night he was home at Blackthorn Hall. Winter passed slowly. The snow came thick in January. Gideon spent his days managing his estate, and his evenings reading, and his nights sleeping badly. He did not write to her. He had said he would not press her, and he did not. He did receive 1 letter in February, in a small even hand he did not recognize until he opened it. It was very short. Your Grace, Cobb is well. The patch on his shoulder has healed. I thought you would want to know. P. B. He read it 3 times. He placed it in the drawer of his desk. He did not write back. He was not sure whether it was permission to write, or only a courtesy, or a small message he wanted to send and did not want an answer to. He decided not to guess. He would wait until spring. March came. The snowdrops appeared under the beech trees. He watched them from his study window. April came, and the crocuses, and the first buds on the hedgerows. He rose one morning in late April, and stood at the window, and knew that the time had come. He did not send word ahead. He rode down to Hensley Cross alone, with only his valet a day behind. He arrived on a warm morning at the end of April, when the fields were beginning to turn green and the hedgerows smelled of hawthorn. He did not go to the manor first. He went to the inn. The innkeeper saw him and bowed at once. Your Grace, I do not need a bed. I need only a horse tied here for an hour. Of course, Your Grace. He walked up the lane on foot. The lane was familiar now. The hedges were higher. Birds sang in them. He passed the place where he had met the boy with the eggs. He passed the small stone wall where he had stood. He came to the gate of the manor garden. He did not go up to the house. He went instead around the side, to the garden path, to the bench where they had sat in the cold January morning. He walked slowly. His boots made a soft crunching sound on the gravel. She was there. She was sitting on the bench, reading. She wore a pale blue dress this time, not grey. Her hair was pinned up simply. She looked up when she heard his step. She did not seem surprised. Your Grace, Miss Blackwood. She closed the book. She set it beside her on the bench. I did not know when you would come. I have come to sit here every morning for the last 2 weeks. I am sorry it took me this long. You said spring. Yes, it is spring now. Yes, he did not sit. He stood in front of her, hat in his hand. She said, Sit down, Your Grace. You are making my neck ache. He sat at the far end of the bench as he had done before. She said, My sister was sent to my aunt in Bath in February. She will not be returning. I did not do that. I know you did not. My father did. He learned about the letters, at last. Not from me. From a friend in London who did not spread what she was told, and who wrote back to my father instead. He was very angry. He has not spoken to Isolde since. I am sorry. You need not be. I am not. How is your father? He is quieter. He is smaller than he was. It has been a hard winter for him. But he asks after you sometimes. He does not know I know that he asks. And you. I am well, Your Grace. Just well. She smiled then. A small, real smile, the first he had ever seen from her. It changed her face entirely. I am well, she said. And I have been thinking, all winter, about what I would say to you when you came. I had a whole speech prepared. It was very fine. It made all the right points. It was correct in every particular. I am not going to give it to you. No, no, because when I saw you walking up the path just now, the speech went out of my head. So I will only say this. I have decided that I do not want to marry a man I do not know. I do not care that he is a duke. I do not care that his estate is large. I have been offered as goods, and I will not be goods. If you want me, you will have to know me, and I will have to know you. Not as a duke, as a man. Yes, I do not know how long that will take. As long as it takes. You said that in January. I meant it in January. I mean it now. She looked down at her hands. She looked up. Would you walk with me? Not toward the house. Toward the stream. Yes, they walked. He did not offer his arm. She did not take it. They walked side by side, not quite touching, along the gravel path and out of the garden and down the small lane that led to the stream. The hawthorn was in bloom on either side. The smell was heavy and sweet and green. Somewhere a lamb called. At the stream they stopped. She sat down on the low stone wall. He stood beside her. She said, "Tell me something true. Something you have not told me. Something that is not about the girl who was rehearsed, or your suspicions, or my sister, or any of it," he thought. He said, "My father died 2 winters ago. Before he died, he told me that everyone I met from that point forward would be wearing a mask. He said I must be careful. I have carried that sentence with me every day since. It has made me a colder man than I want to be. When I met you in the stable, and you did not know who I was, and you told me to move slowly around Cobb because he could not see well on the left side, that was the first time in 3 years I forgot what my father said. That is the truth." She did not answer at once. She looked down at the water. A yellow leaf floated past on the surface. She watched it go around a stone and then out of sight. She said, "Now I will tell you something true. Yes, when I wrote you the letter about Cobb, I nearly did not send it. I wrote it 3 times. I threw 2 of them into the fire. The third one I sent, because I could not bear the thought of you never knowing that his shoulder had healed. I told myself it was about the horse. It was not about the horse." She did not look at him when she said it. She kept looking at the stream. Gideon was quiet for a long moment. He looked at her profile. The morning light was on her face. He could see the small strand of hair at her temple that always escaped its pin, no matter how she wore it. He had noticed it in the stable that first day. He had noticed it every day since. He sat down on the wall beside her, closer than he had been before, not touching. "Close," he said. "I have kept that letter. Have you? In the drawer of my desk. I read it many times. It was a foolish letter." It was not. They sat in silence for a while. The stream ran. A cow lowed in a distant field. The smell of hawthorn and grass and running water was all around them. He felt for the first time in a long time that he was exactly where he was supposed to be, and that he was not being watched, and that there was no mask on his own face either. She said, "At last, you still have not asked me anything. Your Gira, Gideon." She stopped. She looked at him. "Gideon," she said. It was almost a whisper. "I have not asked you anything because I do not want to rush this. I have already rushed once. I want to do this correctly. I understand. But I will ask you one thing. Yes, may I come again? Tomorrow, and the day after, and for as long as your father will have me under his roof, and as long as you will walk with me down this lane, until we know each other, however long that takes. Yes? Yes? Yes." He almost smiled. He did not, quite. She almost smiled. She did not, quite, but she reached out, slowly, and laid her hand on the stone wall between them. She did not put it on his hand. She did not need to. She placed it near enough that he could feel the warmth of it, and she left it there. He looked at her hand. He looked at her face. She was already looking at him. Their eyes held. Neither of them looked away. The stream ran. The hawthorn bent in a small breath of wind. Somewhere far off, in the direction of the manor, a bell rang for the mid-morning. He did not hear it. She did not hear it. He said very quietly, "I saw you. In the stable, in the grey dress. I saw you when you did not know I was there, and what I saw was worth 100 rehearsed girls in silk. I want you to know that. I know it now." "Good." She left her hand where it was. He did not take it. He did not need to. Not yet. There would be time. The wind moved through the hawthorn. A single white petal came loose and drifted down and landed on her sleeve. She looked at it. She did not brush it off. He looked at it too. She said, "Come to the house for supper tonight. My father will want to see you. He has been asking. I will come." Not as the Duke of Ashworth. He looked at her. She was almost smiling. How then? As Gideon. The man who moves slowly around old horses. He did smile then. Just once. Just a little. And she saw it. They sat on the wall for a long time. They did not speak much. The morning light moved across the stream. When at last they rose to walk back to the manor, they walked more closely than they had come. And her hand brushed his once as they walked, and neither of them pulled away, and neither of them made anything of it either. It was only a beginning. They both knew that. And they were both content, for the first time in a very long time, to let a beginning be a beginning, and nothing more, and nothing less. At the gate of the garden she stopped and turned to him. "Tomorrow," she said. Tomorrow she went into the house. He watched her go. Then he turned and walked back down the lane, past the almshouse and the smithy and the baker's and the bridge, to the inn where his horse was waiting. The innkeeper came out to help him mount. Gideon paused, one foot in the stirrup. "Tell me something." "Yes, Your Grace." "Cobb, the old horse. Is he still in the stable?" "He is, Your Grace. Miss Blackwood comes twice a week now. She brings him apples." "Good." He mounted. He rode out of the yard and turned east, toward the manor, though he would not go there for a few more hours. He rode slowly. He had time now. He had all the time he needed. Behind him, in the stable, an old grey horse with one clouded eye lifted his head at the sound of hooves passing, and then, satisfied, lowered it again to the hay,